You gotta start up the learning computer. Alright. Here we go. Learning computer started. Yikes. There. I like to play sorcerer on multi-class in rogue. Nice. Okay. Here we go. We want to go straight to Imaginopolis. The learning computer. Alright, let's go up to the writing. Oh, this is the writer. Wait, we got the wrong one. Get out of here. We want this one. Better. Much better. There we go. Okay, here we go. Check it out. So look, I want comrades to start telling me what we know first of all what is class? Is it like Hey Slow Geoduck, welcome back. Okay, what is class? Does anybody in my chat happen to know? I don't have the CD-ROM in. Oh dear. What are you sending me? We're learning, Geoduck. We're learning. I need this white. There, this will get rid of it. A role in society. We're just brainstorming first. So I'll use the chat ones in these windows like this. A relationship to capital. So NTCs, sort of like this, but okay. And that says grouping. Okay. I think we've got the working definition here actually right now. So we know, like, as coming from the point of view of Marxists, right? We know we don't believe in the idea of there being, importantly, when we analyze class, a class by itself, right? Like there's no upper class based on your relationship to whatever job you have, or whatever car you drive. There's no middle class really based on that either, and lower class, like, that's all a liberal sort of distraction from like a more materialist understanding of what class is. So when we're talking about class, we're talking, of course, a class can't exist by itself. So there's two things sort of that make the class, which is these things together. It's the it's groupings of people based on the relationships and the power dynamic between them. So, in other words, you can't have an oppressor class without having an oppressed class, right? You can't, you have to have like a serf class, you need a landlord, so on and so forth. So, the grouping of people and the relationship and the power dynamic between them, and the relationship to another thing, which is the means of production, which of course is like the land, the factories, so on. So it's these two things that make up class, right? And yes, it is also a role in society, of course. So we're just gonna stick this stuff up here. And so then, as Marxists, we understand, like I was saying, that lower middle, upper middle, whatever, that doesn't exist. We have two big classes. We have proletarians. Can I spell bourgeoisie, do you think? Is that it? Is that spelled right? And then we have bourgeoisie. Can't tell if this is spelt right or not. So, proletarians and bourgeoisie, those are the two big classes, right? And we can think of, again, this is the oppressor class, this is the oppressed class. And so, this class, the oppressor class, cannot exist without this class. Class contradiction caused by socialized production and individual appropriation. Yep, that's yep, that's what that is, like what is between these two, right? And the class contradiction between them, of course, is irreconcilable because the bourgeoisie needs the proletarians in order to exist. So as long as and this is why, as long as capitalist society exists, there can never not be oppression, because for there to be bourgeoisie, there needs to be a lower proletarian. So by proletarianizing everybody in a communist revolution, you do away with the bourgeoisie, right? But now, so everybody's aware of this. Yes, we get this. But now there's also some subclasses as well that Marx talks about and others talk about. So what are some subclasses? Anybody in chat? What are some subclasses that while they fall under these, they can sort of be thought of as going either way. So we got lumpen proletariat. We got petty bourgeois. Okay, we got petty bourgeois. We got lumpen proletariat here. Right, right. What else do we got? in some places. Which really, we'll put that right here. I want to put this one right here. And I want to put the peasantry sort of in between, and we'll put the petty bourgeois over here. Okay. Artisans, craftsmen. We'll put these together. And okay. How about this one? Landlords. Put these here too. We'll put these in the middle as well. There. Okay. Good. Okay. There. Any other? Settler? Haha. Oh, look at what we've got happening here. Twitch streamers? Yep, definitely Twitch streamers. But not just settlers. Look, check this out. Right? Not just settlers, but also, think about it. Remember, they exist in a dynamic juxtaposition. So what else is there? Right? Put these two together. Chatters. Twitch streamers. Chatters. Bankers. Gamers. Okay. And the most oppressed class of all, the gamers. We'll put them right down here, the very bottom rung of society. There. They're falling off the face of society. Society has left them behind. Clergy. Okay, there. I think we got some good ones here. So. Twitch streamers. And yeah, so there's the same sort of thing that they exist in this dynamic juxtaposition. So let's start, let's go over what each of these things are, if we can, a little bit. Okay? Let's save this work, too. Let me save this. Oh, I need to put in a CD. Hold on. Let me just stick in the, let me just stick the CD in here. Where did I put it? I'm just looking for the CD, don't worry. I know I got it. Here it is. Okay, there. Now that should work. Now save it. Oh, these are stickers. Oh, cool. Okay. Okay, so the stickers are cool. Where do I save this at? I know there's a way to do it. We don't want to print. Do you help me save my work? Oh yeah, here we go. Save. Okay. Okay. There. So now it's saved. Perfect. It probably did, Cinnamon. It probably did. Okay, now we're just gonna sorta... We're gonna sorta just jam everything up here together for now. Like this. Now. We're gonna move these down here for a second. All of these. And then we're gonna we're gonna sort of quickly discuss each one a little bit. And then we'll talk about how we determine who is fighting in the revolution and who isn't. Okay. So, let's start with this. So we already talked about the two big
one motherfucker and one motherfucker for all motherfuckers
hey,
everywhere.
anonymous gifter. Thank you, comrade, for the gift sub. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. The sound effects is why I chose this program. Okay. So now we need... Okay, so... Perfect. So now listen, the landlords make a pig noise. That'll help you when we get to that. Okay, so let's start with the Reserve Army of Label. Labor. The Reserve Army of Label. Anybody? Who wants to tell me what the Reserve Army of Label... The Reserve Army of Labor. What is this? What is that? I don't know. I don't understand. Please help me understand. Scabs? Not necessarily. They're people who are, yeah. They're proletarians who are either, and the thing that we have to realize as well, that they're not just short-term unemployed, right? Like, the Reserve Army of Labor can also be people who are unemployed long-term as well. And they exist to, exactly like Chad is saying, to drive the prices down. So, to drive down wages. That's the Reserve Army of Labor, right? To keep the labor price down. Yeah. Encompasses the white working class as well as indigenous people and immigrants. Absolutely. It can include people from all different demographics. Um, it can include people who are on unemployment or people who are chronically unemployed and don't even have unemployment as well. So that can be that's your reserve army of labor. And not only that, but like immigrant workers, migrant workers as well are often used in that reserve army of labor as well to keep wages down. Especially, I mean, especially quote unquote illegal immigration. Because people hired in that type of situation, they can often they get away with paying them under the table far less, etc. So short term, long term, unemployed people, they exist to drive down the wages. They can be scabs sometimes, but any proletarian can be a scab, right? Okay, so the peasantry. What about the peasantry? What is a peasant? So, peasantry. The peasant is a subsistence worker must give his excess production to the land owning class. Yeah. They're like low social status traditionally, but they can either own or rent. They can own as well the land. However, what will often happen, of course, if they do own the land, they will often have to pay taxes on that land, right? So they can own or rent land from a bigger landlord. Perhaps they've purchased the land, but they again will often have to pay tax on that, like in feudal times, to a landlord that sort of like protects the area or whatever. They will own their own implements and tools oftentimes, whether they rent or own. Which is why, which is why Trotsky really thought that they could be, really thought that they could be like counter-revolutionary force, and didn't agree with Leninism necessarily on including them in that. Did you see right wingers getting investigated by the DOJ for being Russian assets? I heard about that, powerful, yeah. Okay? So does peasantry make sense to everybody? So this right here is why by the way, like in the US today, you don't really have a peasantry like this anymore. Like sometimes they might like own the land, but they don't really own many of the tools necessarily. It's generally owned by a big farming conglomerate who will even oftentimes own the actual like crops that they're planting and selling as well. Well, that's because every socialist revolution that has occurred so far, Matron Militia, has been in a semi-feudal country, essentially. And we're gonna get to that in a second too. Okay, so petty bourgeois. What is petty bourgeois? Small business owners, yep. They might employ some people. They're constantly at risk of being thrown down into being proletarians, losing their business, so on and so forth. They're more likely, now, even though they oftentimes will see their interest aligned with the bourgeoisie, 9 times out of 10, they fall into the proletariat. They become ruined men or fall into the proletariat, right? Before becoming actual members of the bourgeoisie. But oftentimes they see their interests aligning as such. Christina, welcome, comrade. So that's the petty bourgeoisie. Are self-employed people like Barber considered petty bourgeoisie? Or only the one that relies on other people's labor? No, if you own your own barber shop, you could be, if you own or like rent your own barber shop that you run yourself, like you could be considered petty bourgeois in that instance. Yes. Do small-time landlords count as petty bourgeois? You mean like if you're what? If you're, I mean, you're still a landlord. You mean if you're like doing all the work yourself and stuff like that? I still think you're landlord. Like, I think just like with, I think there's like big landlord and little landlords, right? And I think you're talking about a landlord there. My barber have turned his first floor of his house into a, yeah, and he cuts his, and that's the shop. So still, even though, and the thing is, like, there's gonna be different degrees, right? So still would be petty bourgeois, really. Yes, those are pig noises. If you're a landlord, you're making money without any labor. I mean, it's kind of hard to say exactly that because, and the reason I say that is because there are landlords, even slumlords, who will do some work in their places, right? But they will, but they're still not doing anything. They're still not providing anything. Cops are definitely class traders, yeah. He rents my grandfather's apartment. So what do you mean? He owns an apartment that your grandfather rents? You're saying? If you're getting a check in the bank for utilities payments received, you're a landlord. Yes. A self-employed person does not create a dialectical other, the way that a small business owner creates an exploited worker. A self-employed person does not create a dialectical other, the way that a small business owner creates an exploited worker. Okay, true. But they still have ownership of some small means of, not large means of production, but of some small means of production. And even it and that's this is the thing, like in the case of petty bourgeois, even if it's one person who owns their own barbershop, generally speaking, the goal of that business is to grow. Or otherwise, you get thrown down into the rank of a proletarian. Just because you're an unsuccessful petty bourgeois, or just because your petty bourgeois endeavor fails, doesn't mean you're any less petty bourgeois, if I may say. When I was 14, we moved to an apartment. We moved from an apartment to a house my dad bought in cash with the help of my mom's inheritance, and is now a rental unit. So he is a small landlord. Yes. If he's renting out a building that he owns, yes, he's a small landlord. Exactly, GMO. Petty bourgeois are often aspiring to be bourgeois, and if they're not, they end up, as I say, being ruined because you're trying to keep up with falling rate of profit as a business owner of any kind, whether you're paying yourself or other people. I just need to scroll up, see what Frank says here. Yeah, bosses will call themselves self-employed because they got a bank loan. Yeah. I guess the only good thing he does is not increasing the price from the day he started renting it. Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, sure, and that's but that still doesn't that still doesn't detract from the fact that he is still a landlord, right? Like, and I get it. Like, I get it. In that case, you need to do it to survive, and it's not comparable to like a slumlord or a big landlord. But just, just saying that, like in the like, because the reason why these categories are important is like if we're thinking in terms of revolution, it's like, this person is a landlord. Where might they stand in the case of revolution? And we're gonna top this all off with a discussion of how to determine where people stand in a bit. Okay. But so you have landlords. Yeah, it's an inherently exploitative relationship, no matter how good comparatively it is, right? My dad's only goal is for the apartment to not be empty. Yeah, but I'm just saying that that's still an inherently exploitative relationship because you're like even if your dad's not like making all that much off of it, he still has to make something. Even to just maintain it, which would be above and beyond what they do. No, I'm just pointing out like we can point out all kinds of examples of people trying to do good work and in these things, but it still means that they're part of that place. They're still part of that subclass, right? At Food Bank, I had to listen to someone talk about how she was going to get her Mercedes like all her friends have to get out of the lower income complexes we live in. Aspiring bougie and rude. Yep. Yeah, and matron, and that's the thing. You also have to analyze, like I said, where that is heading, where the development of that class. So while you can say maybe this self-employed person who owns their own business is not exploiting anyone directly, there is probably indirect exploitation going on, and the desire, like I say, to grow the business or become ruined and part of the proletariat. Yeah, and I mean, so it does like depend a little bit, I think, about like what exactly your self-employment is, because we have to remember right now too. There is another thing, which is I'm thinking about as well, which is which is these gig workers, right? which is, of course, like a lot of times you will be considered yourself to be unemployed, but you have to contract with somewhere else. Yeah, it depends on your job or what you're doing, Kay. You could fall into the category of artisan and small handicraftsman, which is sort of like petty bourgeois, but never expanding like that business thing. So like you can think of like there's a lot of like souvenir shops who kind of cross this boundary, but then there's a lot of like local ones who never will and will end up, of course, over time becoming ruined and falling over here into the proletarians because they can't sustain themselves as artisans and small craftsmen anymore. So you could fall into this as well to be as a self-employed person. Either you have your own OnlyFans content or you are under control of human trafficker. Yep. I think that falls into because I think that falls into like well, I guess it depends because there's legal and illegal. So sex work, but then some forms of sex work end up depending on the society you're in, depending on the laws you're living under, fall under the lumpen proletariat. And then other forms don't. There's also a significant difference between service-based and productive small business. Yeah, okay. To a degree. I agree. I call self-employed people who have never tried nor try to grow working class. See, yeah, I mean, but this is the thing. We're talking about subclasses here. Pretty much every single thing here, except for landlords, probably, bankers, like taken as a whole thing, these are the only things that fall directly under the bourgeoisie. Everything else, realistically, in their interest wise should be more aligned over here, right? Towards the proletarian. The problem comes in with the ideological remolding that happens with the superstructure of whatever society you're living under. So, so that's the thing. Like even petty bourgeois and shit, like a lot of them, while they might own some small means of production, while they might even have a couple employees, while they might have to tend to have a bourgeois mindset, they are closer to being proletarians than they are to being bourgeoisie. At the end of the day, they are far closer to becoming ruined petty bourgeois and then falling into the proletarian class than they are ever becoming bourgeoisie, no matter how bourgeois minded they might be, right? That's just the reality of it. It's like it's like, what's that quote by Lenin? He says like 100,000 small businesses account for nothing and 100 small cartels account for everything. And that's why Stalin and Lenin and people were against the course of just expropriating all of the petty bourgeois. And instead, they took the course of, whenever possible, encouraging them to voluntarily draw closer and closer to that, right? And exactly, the bourgeoisie is a small circle, and it's always shrinking. It's monopolizing. Exactly. Your small business depends on the products of a giant company. You basically work for them. I mean, certainly that can be a dynamic of it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say, like, see, even as a petty bourgeois, you are getting exploited by the big bourgeoisie. Of course, we all are. That's why it's really the 0.001% versus everybody. Because, like I say, even as bourgeois minded as the most as a petty bourgeois person might be, as much as they think their interests might align with that, they are far closer to becoming proletarians at any given moment than they are actually becoming bourgeoisie, right? That's why I say there's these, and then there's like small versions, like we say, like let's put bankers first and then landlords. And because there's again the big landlords, and then there's small landlords who are just who, even if they are trying to grow, probably more likely they're gonna fall down into being ruin a proletarian or a lumpen proletarian. Yeah, and that's why I say like, and that's why haute bourgeoisie. Yeah, and this is why I say like we're not against all all petty bourgeoisie, although we are against small business as a systemic thing. Like we want to overcome small business as a thing. At the same time, think about how many colonized people and stuff do right? Like fall into that category. I know many indigenous people as well fall into the category of petty bourgeois. They own or small handicraftsmen. These two categories are probably the most, besides lumpen proletariat or reserve army of labor. That's probably what most like a lot of First Nations are. Is between these sort of ones here, with I would say gig work, sex work included here too. There. Okay. Like this is probably the most common for at least First Nations around here is these categories here. Now, again, all of this like the interests align with, but so now that's why we have to take the another important subclass into consideration, which is these two here, which are really sort of the same. These ones could sort of be thought of on the same thing, like so here, and then this, right? Because now if we're talking about like general, I bet in like most of your encounters you're gonna find that petty bourgeois, like colonized people, artisans, small handicrafts people, petty bourgeois, lumpen proletariat, they're going to tend to have a more revolutionary outlook. Yeah, you can be colonized without there being settlers. Absolutely, yes. That's where the petit bourgeois between colonizer and colonizer nation becomes important to me. Some petit bourgeois are very reactionary. Yes, exactly. Absolutely. Why isn't hot bourgeoisie all the way at the top? What's higher than hate? I mean, isn't is that not what this that's what this is, right? Yeah, there's exactly. And but at the same time there's petty bourgeois who I'm sure like if you're from certain communities that you know that are revolutionary. Like I even know like small I know people who own small businesses that are native and they run like a it's like a leftist bookstore type thing. But still they fall they you know. So there is both of them. And I mean same with intelligentsia, right? The intelligentsia can really be one or the other. Like we think about Dr. Horn like this, right? We think about Jordan Peterson and you're floating around over here in regards to where their allegiances align. Oh yeah, well, NTC, and that's the thing. That's why a lot of colonized people fall into these two categories, is because, and well, any of these categories is because they are left out of like employment by settlers and colonizers. And then clergy is sort of similar to intelligentsia. You have some that can be very reactionary, and then you have others that are absolutely not. And then, of course, this one right here, Twitch streamers and chatters. The most, I'm here oppressing you right now. I'm oppressing you and exploiting your ears to spread communist propaganda. Or is it the other way around? Is it this way? Maybe it's this way around. Maybe y'all are exploiting me. Huh? Oh shit, look, I just switched it up. Now you're all exploiting me. Ah! I'm being oppressed over here. I'm sort of like an artisan or a small handicraftsman, really. Sort of like this. There. Put it like this. And then the chatters can really fall anywhere over here. And then of course gamers, the most oppressed group, are way down here. You would call them intelligentsia, not academics, academia? Yeah, because intelligentsia includes more than just that. No, mods are definitely not cops. Mods are definitely not cops. So now, but taking this, like we're talking about, we know that, like, so these various ones can take, and now, these various ones can take all different sides for various different reasons. Like here, let's take lumpen proletariat. What is lumpen proletariat? And I hope you're starting to see, as we're looking at all of these subclasses and stuff like this, I hope you're starting to see why, why trying to just like determine based off of these categories alone what side of the revolution someone is, i.e., why we need intersectional analysis. You're starting to see, I hope this like graph, putting this all on the screen like this, is helping you understand why intersectional analysis is so important, by the way. Yeah, dealers, yeah, so criminal elements, people who make money outside the system. So people essentially who are making not money, but they're, let's say, wait, this would be better if I'd say making, surviving, or, because we can have both, right? So I think something that Gerald Horn also pointed out is, much like with landlords, you can have small lumpen, like our comrades at like the lumpen like the lumpen boys over at Sunnyvale Trailer Park boys, right? Over in Sunnyvale, you can have your small lumpen, but then you can have big mob bosses, big mob leaders who are also lumpen. And while they might be like petty bourgeois in the sense that they have like these assets, they are lumpen because they make most of their money through the gray and black markets. I like that term you just used, Blatt. I like that term you just used. The lumpen aristocracy. I like that term you just used. So they sort of fall in with the petty bourgeois. Sometimes they can even mingle with the petty bourgeois and the landlords and the cops and everything else, because there's a certain level of, as again Gerald Horne points out, there can be a certain level of class collaboration that goes on. We're communists that rob banks for funding lumpen. No, because, well, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Lumpen proletariat are surviving from the gray and black markets, or making money above and beyond survival. That is their main means of income. That is their main means of survival, is through that. Like, whereas, I mean, like, in the case of Stalin and Lenin and them, they robbed banks to help fund revolutionary activities, but that wasn't like that wasn't their main thing, you know? They were professional, they were revolutionaries. They were doing something else. If you catch my drift. What if you give all the money to a certain political party? Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So they weren't really like robbing the banks to survive. They were robbing the banks in order to fund certain activities. You see. So all of these categories, you can see how dynamic there are. There can be certain levels of class collaboration here, and some will, like, we can say like, okay, well, this is the dangerous class. They might serve the reaction over here, or they might come over here and serve the revolution. How can we tell? Same with this. All of their interests sort of align, like I say, other than small exceptions, all align more with the working masses, with the proletarian interests. So then at the end of the day, how on earth do we determine all of this? Do we just go, okay, well, this person is intelligentsia, therefore we can't trust them because they might serve the thing? No, you need to take a differential object appraisal, and you need to analyze people based on their ideology, which is expressed in their practice, right? And this is why what I was saying, when you were saying before about how every single revolution in these semi-feudal societies has been, you know, the peasantry has been numerically the main force, but they have been led by proletarian ideology. And this is the thing. It's less important what social class background you're actually coming from. That is least important. And although that does affect it does influence like your outlook, and influences the likelihood of you accepting things and stuff like that. It's still the smallest thing. Your social origin is the smallest thing. It's your ideological consciousness at the end of the day that matters. And while, like, whether you're colonized, whether you're indigenous, whether you're a settler, whether you're a Twitch streamer, like, all of this stuff will influence your ideology and could play a role in that, but so can a lot of other things. And at the end of the day, the thing that determines whether you serve the proletarian cause, whether you're led by revolutionary proletarian ideology, is not whether you come from the peasantry class or whether you come from this class or that class. At the end of the day, it's what ideology you have, and therefore what class you serve in. And that's why intersectional analysis is so vital. And even just taking the working class, quote unquote, is the main force of revolution in any situation, in any society, is just a misunderstanding. You need an intersectional analysis of the main force of revolution. And like in our society where we are here, it's going to be like I say, I mostly led by colonized, indigenous, right? Oppressed people are going to end up being the leaders of it, and they might fall into artisans, they might like from all different walks of life. But led by a proletarian thing, just as in like as you pointed out, just as in USSR and other places, it really was sort of the peasantry that was the main force, but led by a proletarian ideology, which is exactly the alliance that was championed by the USSR. That's what the whole hammer and sickle symbolizes, right? Does that make sense? Any comments? Anything else about specific classes that you would like to say? Any comments about anything that I've said? Any questions? Chat, freeform question and comment time. Now. So any comments you want to make about any of the subclasses, any of the classes, any questions you want to ask, anything like that. But our industrial base is gone. So do we need to proletarianize ourselves or peasantize ourselves? No. Because like I say, what matters is as I just explained, Matron, because what matters is having the proletarian ideology. So even if our industrial base is gone, even if there is no quote unquote original like what Marx would consider the proletarian, from his analysis, even if that doesn't exist, we can still have revolution. In the same way, places like Russia could have a proletarian revolution, even though they had majority of peasantry and only a small amount of proletarian. We learn proletarian ideology. We learn proletarian strategy. That's what we're doing, right? That's what scientific socialism is. That's what Marxism is. So we are learning that we don't need to proletarianize ourselves first. We don't need to. That's a talking point that you will see sometimes from these Midwestern Marxist type. They will say that, oh, we need to proletarianize, and then we can get revolutionary again. That's not true. That's not true. People are experiencing capitalism. They're experiencing colonialism. They're experiencing imperialism. Revolution is still logistical economic process though. But the economic oppression of capitalism, imperialism, and colonialism is still weighing on us all the time. Regardless of whether or not our industrial base has eaten away, we are still victims of capitalism. So that is still you're kind of falling into like an economic reduction there. We have to understand that like saying that ideological conflict is territory to the organization of the labor involved, isn't it? Kind of like it's kind of like it's not a one or the other kind of situation, and ideological conflict and ideological consciousness informs labor, informs the struggle of labor, informs where labor is at and where labor can go. human the thing about human beings is every activity that we make is done so through our consciousness. So you can't ignore the role that consciousness in general and ideological consciousness specifically plays in shaping ourselves. That's not to fall into like idealism or something like this, right? That's not falling into idealism of thinking that the ideas or independent ideological consciousness comes first and material coalesces out of that. It's simply the recognition that in in, in our situation where revolution is ripe and has been ripe, and even in places and societies where revolution was not ripe and the conditions were unfavorable, the thing that gave impetus was a revolutionary consciousness, which is why in USSR, like, it was revolutionary consciousness of working class revolutionary consciousness that guided the peasantry and built a socialist society. Proletarianization comes after we build a socialist society. The problem is that you have most of the population that have been brainwashed by the people in power and don't even know we need a revolution. Yeah, and that is often the case in a peaceful time situation. But I think, Bama, what you end up doing there is simply analyzing settlers and ignoring colonized people who are more and more becoming awakened, becoming more and more militant, more and more organized all the time. Whether we're talking about black people, overexploited immigrants, native people. Of course, there's the brainwashed people are always something that we have to fight against. They were labor aristocracy in Lenin's time. In our society, that labor aristocracy has become so much more bloated. But what you're saying is like, you can't proletarianize a society if you don't have the state power over that society. You see. So the other problem that you're getting into when it's like, do we need to proletarianize and peasantry first? Well, we can't do that. We don't have control. The bourgeoisie have control, you see. So you end up getting into the realm of just, well, we gotta wait with folded arms for conditions to be ripe. It doesn't work like that. We make revolution with what we have. Other societies made revolution with what they had in unfavorable circumstances. In societies where people seem hopelessly brainwashed, in Russia too, you know? Things the things always move slowest at certain point. Hey, Redispy, we're just talking about class and subclass, and we're talking about how even though the U.S. doesn't have a classic, like, industrialized proletariat, it can still wage proletarian revolution, just like how in Russia they could wage proletarian revolution, even though they had majority peasantry, right? Because they could be guided by revolutionary ideology of the working class, of the proletariat. And I'm just trying to impart to comrades the importance that revolutionary consciousness plays an important role, because humanity, absolutely all of our activities are done through our consciousness. That's not to discount the role that economics and material factors play on us. It shaped us. It got us ready for this moment in history that we're at now. But conscious action does the rest. Conscious action plays a role. And I'm paraphrasing Che Guevara there. Conscious action does the rest of it, right? Like, the material conditions can only get us so far. Human consciousness has to do the rest of the work. I agree with you there, and I don't mean waiting for the right conditions. I'm just asking what our ideology tells us the next step materially. Say a revolutionary conflict breaks out tomorrow. Which what control logistical systems are going to break down? International traders are going to pull back to protect their investments. So the labor has to be organized to feed the activated workers to create the means of resisting the reaction. Yes, and I would say, Matron, that this is stuff that is happening in First Nations communities because as the conflict between us and the colonial state oftentimes becomes heightened, we see more and more of like the need to blockade and the need for us to build up like dual power within First Nations communities themselves. Well, the step right now, I think, for revolutionaries anywhere, especially in the West, is to start building up those, like what First Nations people are doing in their communities, like what you see lots of native organizations doing, I think, is what settlers also need to start doing in their communities and helping in oppressed communities as well, and in poor communities, which is start building the dual power. Like, to in order to create that means, in order to organize that means, we need to be able to actually like build the party, and to build the party you need people to support it. You need people to support the cause. And for people to support the cause, the best way to do that is to um, sort of meet them where the state is failing them. So if the immediate next step is to, if you're not organized, start organizing, get involved. If it's like a church, maybe there's church groups or something in your area that do good work. Maybe it's PSL, maybe it's CPUSA, even that local organization that does good work. Maybe there's an indigenous led fucking group that you can help out with, right? Like anything like this that's helping to sort of build up and fill in the void where state power is missing, and we want to sort of bring an overarching like leadership to that as well. We want to pair that with party building. Sailor Indigenous Solidarity under the leadership of Indigenous nations. Sounds so beautiful, doesn't it? I hope that answers your question, matron. I mean, it's hard for me to get any more specific than that because I'm here in Mi'kmaq. You're wherever you are. Cinnamon is in Texas. You know what I mean? Redispi's in Sweden. We're all in different places, and we all have very vastly different conditions, and very vastly what is the next step here is different everywhere, very different and complex. But the main thing is that we need to build a revolutionary party, and we need to pair that with building up like a dual power. And and by dual power I mean you need to serve people where they're, if there's not enough food in an area, we need to work to bring food to that area, and pair that revolutionary education and the encouraging to get organized along with whatever else, right? And churches and stuff, they can all be good for giving you a basis through which to start that, even if you don't have a communist party or a revolutionary party that can be like, that's good for that. And even you as an individual can help encourage organization, like, by doing that, right? I mean, it can feel like an uphill battle. I know. Cinnamon, like, look, even in our native communities and stuff like this, like we get, I love the song, but we get like snotty nosed res kids with bougie natives, and like, even in our communities, it can feel like an uphill battle. Absolutely, you got to play a little bit of the law of average, like if you were a salesperson almost. But yeah, bookstores, food not bombs, absolutely. Anything else? Anybody? Any further comments on the class subclass discussion before we uh before we close it off and do another horn talk? Last call for stuff. By peasantize ourselves, I mean I mean, learn agriculture and accustom our bodies to the type of labor involved. Oh, yeah, I mean, that, absolutely. But see, the reason why, like, that, it confuses me when you use peasantry like that, because peasantry, like I say, it's someone who owns either, well, they own small amounts of means of production, either in the form of farm implements or farm implements and land. But yes, learning how to farm, learning how to tend land, learning how to care for animals is, I think, yeah, I think Blatt would agree with me. Something tells me Blatt would agree with me that I think gardening, even if you live in a city, learning how to do that kind of stuff, make soap, garden, all of that kind of thing is an extremely valuable skill that everybody should. Yeah, if you have the means and ability to practice that, you should do that. Every neighbor and home between me and the major roads has a garden. Yeah. And I look at DPRK, right, Blatt? I look at DPRK when they go into the farming communities. And not only are these communities surrounded by farmland, but every single home in that community has a farm in front of it. Yeah, see, look, it's just everything that we were talking about, Redispi. See, we were talking about the peasantry. They own, rent small land for production. We were talking about small handicrafts. I move it around as we're talking, see? I just was moving around as we were sort of like talking and discussing the different concepts. Try and get people to just like see when I spread it all out why the need for an intersectional analysis is so important. Like, look at the landlords. Look, landlords. And the Reserve Army of Labor. This is the new thing that we're doing on Thursdays for Dispy. Our new thing on Thursdays is learning theory with a Windows 95 computer. I hope you like it, because that's what we're doing on Thursdays from now on. It's never too late to start learning about farming and gardening and everything. I'll just say. It's never a bad time to learn that skill. Yeah, cats certainly are. Okay, then I want to leave you with a quote from her comrade. With everything we've just learned here, with everything we've just discussed, I want to leave you with a quote from her comrade Kim Jong-il, okay? Take this into consideration alongside everything we just learned today. The question of the main force of the revolution cannot remain invariable in any era, society, or revolution. Nor is it a question that can be solved only on the basis of class relations. And hence, regarding the working class as the main force of the revolution anytime and anywhere is an expression of a dogmatic viewpoint towards the preceding theories that is not correct in principle either. So now when I read that, I hope that you all have a better understanding now of what Comrade Kim Jong-il is trying to illustrate by this point. And why it was such a vital and such an important contribution for DPRK to include that writing brush, that calligraphy brush, in with their hammer and sickle. Because their big contribution, one of their big things was turning the intelligentsia and understanding like classes in this other way, or at least understanding the mode of force in this other way. that still takes into consideration our understanding of class from Marxism Leninism, but also incorporates an intersectional analysis that takes things into consideration, like one's relationship to a colonialism or a neo-colonialism. Right. Hey, Mama, welcome back. Great to see you, comrade. I hope you're having a great day. I know we are. We just learned about subclasses and classes, and now we're gonna watch Gerald Horn, and we're gonna watch the DPRK travel vlog Return to Pyongyang. And I'm gonna roll a doob while we're doing this, and then after that we can go on to our candy and learning, which is the universe and bugs. Right now is what we're working on. So we've got coming up next for the bugs episode, we've got the silk spinners. And for the universe episode, we've got the moon. It's the moon, everyone. But first, Gerald Horn. Two employees indicted for covertly funding and directing U.S. Oh God, this should be good. We're gonna hear about the RT employees from Gerald Horn. Hell yeah, that seems a lot better. And then we'll do our final candy. Oh wait, but we can't do this yet. Before, I almost forgot. I'm sorry. I apologize. Even though we're getting rid of, no, we're gonna save this work. Save both the old and the new versions. Oh yeah. There we go. There was our last class there. Isn't that cool? Now we'll quit. And now we shut down the computer. And it is now safe to turn off our computer.